So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a truly persistent parasite. This is one that can hang out in the human body for decades, just a silent passenger waiting for its moment. We're talking about Plasmodium malaria.
Okay, let me ask you something. Imagine you took a trip, maybe years and years ago. You felt a little sick, but you got over it and you completely forgot it ever happened. Then, out of the blue, a weird cyclical fever starts up. What if the cause was something that's been hiding in your blood this whole time?
And look, this isn't just some crazy hypothetical scenario. It's a real clinical puzzle that doctors have to solve, sometimes in places where you would least expect it.
All right, picture this. We're in the Netherlands, a country that officially got rid of malaria way back in 1970. A patient walks into a clinic and they've got this one really strange symptom, a high fever that comes back like clockwork every 72 hours. Now, in a non-tropical country, malaria is probably the last thing on a doctor's mind, and that's what makes this whole puzzle so fascinating.
So what's behind this mysterious, super-regular fever? Well, the culprit is an ancient and unbelievably resilient organism. So let's meet the parasite at the very heart of our story.
The cause is Plasmodium malariae, and it's the parasite that's responsible for a specific type of the disease called quartan malaria. Now that name, quartan, is pretty interesting. It actually comes from the Latin word for fourth, because in the old Roman way of counting, the fever would pop up again on the fourth day, or, as we measure it, every 72 hours.
Now, to really get what Plasmodium malariae is all about, you have to understand how it lives. It's a classic endoparasite. So what does that mean? It means it lives its entire life inside its hosts. It can't survive out in the open world. Its whole existence is just a journey shuttling between human and mosquito bodies.
So what is this thing exactly? It's not a bug, it's not a worm. Plasmodium malaria is a protozoan, basically a really complex single-celled organism. And that makes it fundamentally different from metazoan parasites, like parasitic worms, which are multicellular animals.
So here's the crucial point. How does it get inside our cells? Well, its scientific classification gives us a huge clue. It belongs to the phylum Aplacomplexa. And that name comes from a feature that all these parasites share, a specialized toolkit of organelles at their tip called the apical complex. You can think of it like a biological master key that lets them break into and invade our cells. It's what makes them so good at what they do.
So how does a single-celled parasite cause such a huge problem? Well, the secret is in its life cycle. And believe me, it is a masterpiece of biological complexity.
Okay, before we dive into the nitty-gritty of the full diagram, let's just break its journey in the human body down into 3 main steps. It all starts with that mosquito bite. That's how it gets in. From there, it makes a silent, strategic pit stop in the liver to multiply. And finally, it launches its main assault on our red blood cells.
Okay, let's take a closer look at this journey. This diagram really tells the whole story, and it's split into 2 main phases. On the left, you've got the sporogonic cycle. That's the sexual reproduction part that happens inside the mosquito. But for us, the story starts on the right with the schizogonic cycle, which is all asexual reproduction. A mosquito injects the parasites, they travel to the liver, and there they multiply quietly. Once they mature, they burst out and begin the blood stage, invading red blood cells, multiplying again, and then rupturing them to infect more cells. And that cycle, right there in the blood, is what causes all the symptoms of malaria.
And this brings us to a crucial number, 72 hours. That is the precise length of the blood stage cycle for Plasmodium malaria. Remember our patient in the Netherlands? Their fever returned like clockwork because every 72 hours, millions of infected red blood cells rupture in perfect synchrony. This synchronized assault is what triggers that intense fever and chills, and it's the defining hallmark of this particular parasite.
Okay, so you've got this incredibly stealthy parasite, capable of maintaining this low-level, often asymptomatic infection for years. So how on earth do doctors actually find it?
Despite all our modern technology, the classic method is still the gold standard. It really comes down to a blood sample, a specific stain called JAMSA, and a trained eye looking through a microscope. This technique has been the foundation of malaria diagnosis for over a century. And this is what pathologists are literally seeing under the microscope. The parasites show up as these little purple forms right inside the red blood cells. This slide shows a great comparison. On the bottom is Plasmodium malaria, and up top is the more common Plasmodium falciparum. Technicians use 2 types of slides. A thick smear, like this one, concentrates the blood to make it easier to spot any parasites at all. Then they use a thin smear to look closely at the parasite's shape and size to identify the exact species.
Of course, microscopy isn't the only tool. Rapid tests can give a quick yes or no answer by detecting parasite proteins. PCR tests look for the parasite's DNA and are incredibly sensitive, able to confirm the species with high accuracy. And then you have serology, which looks for our own antibodies, and that can be really useful for spotting evidence of a past or chronic infection.
Now let's zoom out. If a country like the Netherlands is malaria-free, why is this parasite still a concern? Well, the answer lies in our interconnected, modern world.
In the Netherlands, all malaria is imported. This table breaks down where the cases are coming from. A key group is travelers visiting friends and relatives, often shortened to VFRs. They're considered high risk, partly because they might stay longer and be less consistent with taking preventative measures. Asylum seekers and refugees are another significant source of cases, particularly for parasites like Plasmodium malariae. And then tourists and expatriates returning from endemic regions also add to these numbers, which just highlights how global travel keeps this ancient disease on the modern medical map.
So prevention is pretty straightforward, but it requires discipline. It's a two-pronged attack. First, you avoid the vector, the mosquito, by using repellents and bed nets. Second is what's called chemoprophylaxis, which is really just a fancy way of saying you take anti-malarial drugs to prevent infection before, during, and after a trip. The crucial factor, as all the research shows, is adherence, just sticking to the plan.
But even with good prevention, infections still happen. And this means the fight against malaria is a dynamic and ongoing battle, with strategies that have to constantly evolve. How an infection is treated can really depend on where you are. In the Netherlands, doctors follow national guidelines, which often recommend the drug chloroquine for an uncomplicated Plasmodium malariae infection. But internationally, the World Health Organization sets the standards, and those are adapted locally to account for regional patterns of drug resistance, which is a huge and growing concern.
And the battle is being fought in labs all around the world. Scientists are pushing the frontiers with research into next-generation vaccines, powerful monoclonal antibodies that can provide immediate protection, and even some cutting-edge genetic strategies designed to stop mosquitoes from transmitting the parasite in the first place.
Which brings us to our final thought. Plasmodium malariae presents this unique challenge. It's a parasite that has absolutely mastered the art of persistence, capable of hiding out for decades. So in our highly globalized world, this raises a critical question. How do we fight an enemy that can travel silently across borders and wait a lifetime to strike? We put this explainer together using Gemini, and you can find a detailed list of all our sources in the linked Notebook LM document. If you found this journey into the world of Plasmodium malariae interesting, please subscribe to the channel and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.